Yeah. Hello everyone. Just small stream. Hello. I don't know. I'm just going to watch this video and this is going to be a very short stream and all. Hope you will like it though. And what can I say? Let's start. It's just watching videos, nothing else. We're just going to watch videos from Hit Start.
About the How to Beat videos, and I really enjoyed making them, but I felt like only so few movies really fit for that format. So I've been thinking about this for a while, and we're going to do something a little bit different. In this series, we're going to break down the decisions people make in horror movies and look at which ones are the worst and the smartest. Because let's face it, horror movies are notoriously well known for people making pretty awful choices. And we're going to start today with Paranormal Activity 2. In the movie, we follow the Rays as they get a new member to their family, their son Hunter, and things go pretty great for a while. During the first few days, they have a barbecue with this really gross looking salad, and there's even a moment where the parents do it in the bathtub.
You don't want to smash me? I kind of want you to smash me.
Really? Oh.
Yeah.
Let me release the Kraken.
Anyway, 4 nights after Dr. Octocock smashes his wife, their maid Martine is home alone with the baby while the rest of the family is out. Throughout the evening, she experiences many strange things, such as objects moving by themselves, lights turning on and off, and most notably a really loud bang in Hunter's bedroom. So she lights a paper roll on fire to spread smoke and does some kind of ritual to rid the house of ghosts and evil spirits. Once the parents come back and see this, they want her to stop. Martine tries telling them that the house is haunted, but they just tell her to leave. The next morning, Daniel, the father, fires the maid over that incident. This brings us to the first big mistake, and it's that Martine is very extreme in her description of what happened last night, because she says something like, "Hey, by the way, your house is haunted. That's why I made your kids smoke a piece of cardboard." Of course nobody's gonna believe that. Instead, she could just be more honest and say, "There were loud banging sounds coming from Hunter's room, the lights turned on and off, and I felt like I wasn't alone." Then Daniel would be much more inclined to trust her. However, arguably an equally big mistake is not listening to the maid. What's notable here is that there was something that looked like a break-in only a few days earlier. That's why they have these security cameras. So if it looks like Martine experienced something strange, it doesn't have to mean ghosts. It could be that someone was breaking in. Sure, when Martine says the house is haunted, it does sound a little bit unbelievable. But that thought probably came from somewhere. So the dad can check the security cameras to see what exactly spooked her. Honestly, I would have probably just checked them out of curiosity. And if they watched only 10 minutes of footage, they would notice a lot of weird things. This could keep them more alert throughout the story. So over the next few days, they experience more weird things. This ghost is such a jerk, he just knocks stuff over for no reason. Oh, what's that? You want to relax? Okay. What about that? Clean it up. Relaxing, not with me or not. And the ghost is so disgusting. At one point, the daughter, Allie, goes to the toilet and finds a giant turd in there. The parents deny doing it, so I guess the ghost just dropped a massive duke and didn't even flush? That's just nasty, man. What the hell? And while Allie and the dad kind of make a joke out of the situation, the mother, Christy, is a little bit more serious and thinks there might be something wrong. Not because of the ghost turd, but from other things. Then on the 13th night, Allie is home alone taking care of the baby, and she invites her friend Brad to hang out. He's also from the neighborhood. The two decide to play with a Ouija board for fun and ask the ghost what it wants. Now we know from the first movie that whipping out the Ouija board is not the best idea, as it's inviting in the ghost. Anyway, at first Brad is messing around and moves it to spell a bunch of nonsense, but then it really does move by itself and starts spelling out Hunter, thereby directly telling them that it wants the baby. However, since Brad lied before, Allie doesn't believe him when he says that he's not moving it. It cuts off before we find out what happens, but judging from the vague conversation we hear from Hunter's room, it seems like Brad has given up on the Ouija board to hit on Allie, which might be one of the worst choices. Now I think if most people were in Brad's shoes, they would have been really freaked out when it starts to spell the name, especially because the board keeps moving when Allie gets her hand off of it. This shows him that it can't be her moving the tile. Brad is essentially provided with proof that there is a ghost here, but instead focuses his efforts on trying to get a girl. Now I would have probably done the same, but it's still not a good idea. Later that evening, after Brad is already gone, Allie hears a knocking on the door. She goes outside to check it out, but then the door slams behind her and she gets locked out. And before we continue, I have a question. Why is night vision enabled on the security cameras? There are a ton of lights on. Night vision is completely useless here. So when Allie's locked out, it leaves Hunter alone in the house, and the ghost starts lifting him up and dragging him around the bed. About 30 minutes later, the parents finally come home. They can't find Allie anywhere in the house and eventually see her outside. She explains how the door is shut by itself and gets a lot of crap from her dad. Now what Allie did after she was locked out was kind of strange, because she just stood in their backyard for the entire time. Instead, Allie could have rushed to one of her many neighbors, like Brad for example, and asked to use a phone to call her parents and tell them to hurry home. I mean, there's a toddler left alone in the house. Come on, even I would be a better babysitter. And that's not saying much, because I think we all know what happens when I'm taking care of some little pants pooper. After this night, Allie feels that something strange is happening in the house, and she seriously starts believing that there might be a ghost. So she checks the tape from last night and shows her dad the footage of the door slamming shut. Now one pretty bad decision is that Daniel doesn't trust anyone, and this doesn't even have to do anything with believing in ghosts, but just listening to 3 people who say they've heard something strange and felt unsafe. But Daniel always goes directly to painting everyone as a kook because they got scared. Anyway, he keeps saying that this was caused by a draft. The windows in the back were open and that must have shut the door. But there was nothing else open in the back, and the wind wouldn't shut the door this abruptly. But even though Daniel's choice to ignore everything is not great, Allie is way too fast in her research. She literally picks out the worst piece of evidence from that night. Now, if she genuinely believes that the house is haunted, she could scrub through the security cameras for more evidence, and she would only have to look for 2 minutes before or after she got locked out to see Hunter being lifted up by invisible forces, or herself on the couch while a shadow creature approaches and the TV going crazy. Those clips would have been a lot more convincing. Over the next few days, Christy slowly begins experiencing more and increasingly unexplainable events. And at this point, the movie slows down quite a bit. I mean, it's really fucking slow. You watch night after night as like one door opens every 45 minutes. Paranormal Activity is the only franchise that could get away with this. So on the 19th day, Christy is alone in the kitchen when this happens. Is it over? Oh no, we still have like a half an hour left. Now this is by far the best evidence of a ghost. So what does Christy do? Well, to answer that, let's look at the advice that her sister Katie gives.
You need to leave this alone. You need to ignore it, but you're gonna end up just like Mom. Do you understand me?
Now Katie's tip about simply ignoring everything is really terrible, because that's never going to work. Come on, if all you have to do is not think about the ghost, we all know that's all you're going to be thinking about. And the ghost came into their life before Christy thought about it. So Katie's logic doesn't even make sense because Christy didn't summon him. But it's only half Katie's fault, because regardless of what she said, actually ignoring this blatant paranormal activity is crazy. Whatever's there, it's only been getting stronger and more threatening over the last few days. So just saying that you don't see anything and not even putting up a fight or trying to solve it, that will only make it worse. Also, again, cameras. This would be an event that could serve as proof of something supernatural and warrant further help. So Allie starts noticing how Christy acts increasingly more paranoid. This leads her to believe that Martine was probably right in the beginning and there really is something wrong here. That night the ghost injures the dog. This leads Allie and Daniel to take her to the vet and leaving Christy alone in the house with Hunter. After some time, Christy begins hearing the pans banging together in the kitchen. Now, to understand the significance of that, it's important to mention that the ghost has been taunting her multiple times with the pans. It's always dropping them and banging them together in order to freak her out. So when she once again hears the pans, it's probably a sign to get out of there. We do see that they have a second car. If you look up where it was filmed, you can see that this car is in front of their garage. It also takes a few minutes for the ghost to attack. This potentially leaves time for Christy to escape and take Hunter to the nearest McDonald's, which is only like 7 minutes away. But just staying here alone makes her a very easy target. So at about 2 AM, the ghost attacks and drags Christy into the basement. She stays in here until almost 3 AM. We cut to the next morning and everyone's still there, but the mom is acting really strange, because what happened last night is that she got possessed by the ghost. During the next day, the dad says that he has to leave for work for a few hours. Allie asks him not to go since Christy is acting really weird and she doesn't want to be alone with her. But the dad has to go. Allie then stays on the couch while Hunter is sleeping upstairs, but only a short while later she hears him crying. She checks on him, but the mother is sort of guarding him, aggressively telling Allie to leave. This obviously freaks her out a bit. However, Allie didn't have to stay here. She could have, for example, taken Hunter out for a walk while the mother was still sleeping. That way Allie would be out of the haunted house and away from the creepy mom. Anyway, when the dad comes back, Allie shows him the footage of the mother being dragged into the basement. Okay, so now she checks the tapes. After seeing this, the dad calls Martine back and asks her for help. Once she's there, she explains how there is a ghost that's haunting Christy, and the only way to get rid of it is to transfer it to a blood relative, meaning that their only option is to give it to Katie, Christy's sister. As they're going through this ritual, things go crazy around the house, but eventually Christy is fine again and doesn't remember anything. A few weeks later, Katie comes over and starts explaining how she's been experiencing very strange occurrences in her home. So everything seems to be fine. But on the night of October 9th, Katie comes to the Ray family house and kills Daniel and Christy and walks off with Hunter. Now there is no way to win here because they're up against a supernatural entity and they don't have enough information to defeat it. However, what the Ray family can do is move. As in, switch houses and don't tell anyone. I believe that the ghost doesn't magically know where everyone is. So moving could increase the amount of time it takes for the entity to find them. Now in the fourth entry, we see that it takes years for the ghost to find Hunter once he gets adopted by a new family. So moving and staying undercover could potentially help them to never get attacked by the evil spirit. Overall, I'd say the best choice was bringing back Martine, as it allowed them to save the family, even though they do get killed in the end. And I'd have to say that the worst choice is the mother ignoring all the crazy events that are happening to her. She's basically given proof that there is a ghost, but simply doesn't want to pay attention to it. Anyways, that's the new format. Let me know if you enjoyed it. As always, I hope you liked it, and that I get to see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys.
Let's move to the next part now.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. As you know, in this series, we look at how to survive horror movies, but we do it in our own way. In the video, we'll cover the bad choices, the good choices, and the big mistakes you need to avoid to survive until the end. Today, we're looking at Paranormal Activity 3, where we go back to 1988 to see what happened during the childhood of the sisters Katie and Christy, the protagonists from the last two entries. The movie starts during Katie's birthday, and I hope they're careful because it looks like John Wayne Gacy made an appearance. We see that Christy plays with her imaginary friend who she calls Toby. We're also introduced to the mother, Julie, and her boyfriend Dennis. He's a videographer who's always filming everything. One night, Dennis and Julie record themselves smoking a blunt and they try to make a special video. But Julie keeps feeling like there's something nearby watching them. Maybe the demon wants to make it a threesome, who knows. Suddenly an earthquake hits. Both of them run out of the room but leave the camera standing. It then tips over and points towards the door. When some dust falls from the ceiling, it lands on a figure standing in the room, but a few seconds later it walks away and the dust shakes off. When Dennis reviews the footage, he notices how strange this is. He also shows it to Julie, but she doesn't believe him. And the fact that she doesn't is a little bit weird, because she herself sensed that something was off that night. She constantly looked around the room as if they weren't alone. If anything, this should confirm her suspicion. What's important to notice here is that it's not just dust landing on some invisible object, but it shapes what looks like a shoulder and a head, indicating that it's some sort of humanoid, which we see in the later movies. Also, when the creature walks away, footsteps are heard. It's understandable that Julie doesn't instantly think that there's a demon, but it should seem a little bit suspicious. So Julie ignores it and tells Dennis,
"This has to be erased and this has to be erased, or we're never having sex again."
and they never had sex again. But Dennis wants to see if he can capture anything else, so he sets up 2 cameras throughout the house, one in his bedroom and one in the girls'. By the way, if he does happen to find anything on that second camera, that will be tough to explain. I mean, he's recording these kids that he's not related to as they're sleeping. I mean, even in the 80s that must have been weird. 4 nights later, the girls are camping outside while the adults are sleeping in their bedroom. But late at night, loud footsteps are heard running around the house and the lights start going on and off. They gotta watch out, man. It looks like the demon is gonna increase their electric bill by like 2 cents. Eventually, Dennis checks out the other rooms but finds no one. Julie looks after the girls outside and Dennis follows her, but they notice that the door that leads to the garden is locked. Strangely enough, they completely ignore this event too. Again, they don't have to instantly jump towards thinking that it's something supernatural, but I'd want to know who was in the house. It couldn't have been either one of the girls because the door that leads outside to the backyard was locked from the inside. And if Dennis would look through the footage, he would also see their bedroom door closing all by itself while he's in Christy's and Katie's room. Over the next few days, Dennis collects more footage of really strange things happening. Shutters close by themselves, lamps start shaking, and most notably, we see both Katie and Christy playing Bloody Mary in the bathroom. They say the name 3 times in the mirror with the lights off, but nothing seems to happen. Afterwards, the two leave the room, but keep the camera recording. About 10 seconds later, we see a door slightly opening by itself, and then a loud bang is heard. I still don't know what happened here, but it's definitely not normal. So Dennis and his assistant Randy watch all of this footage, and they both believe that there's something supernatural. This is a surprisingly good choice compared to the second movie, because there they recorded a lot of the strange things happening, but never checked the cameras. Dennis then sets up another camera which rotates back and forth to capture the entire living room. One day, Christy plays with her stuffed animals and Toby, who she describes as an old, tall man. Katie then interrupts her and tells Christy that this ghost isn't real and she's a baby for having what she thinks is a fake friend. Christy then tells her that Toby's actually in that small dark room in the corner. Katie, for some reason, goes inside there to check, even though she can clearly tell from the outside that it's completely empty. If that were me, I would need to check that room, because it's either no one, a demon, or some type of Jared Fogle situation, and I don't want to see either one of those. Anyway, once she's inside, the door shuts very abruptly, and Katie yells at her sister to let her back out. Shortly before the mother comes upstairs, the door opens, and Katie is pretty upset. Then the camera continues to record as the door to that room moves once again all by itself. Now, even though Dennis looks through all of these strange things, he never really does anything about it. At first I thought that he doesn't think that the ghost has bad intentions, but he asks Randy to get a book on demons and ghosts. Randy decides to steal the book from the library, and it tells him that it's probably evil. At this point, he has a lot of video footage to confirm his suspicions about what's going on. And since demonologists and psychics are real in this universe, what he can do is get the help of a priest or someone like that to understand what it is that's in his house and what he should do. This is what Katie did in the first movie, and it gave her a lot of meaningful information. They found out that it's evil and they shouldn't interact with it. This could help Dennis decide what he should do next. That evening, Dennis and Julie go out for dinner while the kids stay at home with a babysitter. After the adults are gone, they all play for a little bit, and at 9 p.m. she puts them to sleep. As in, she brings them to bed, she doesn't kill them. Anyway, the babysitter then reads in the kitchen. A short while later, we see someone under a sheet come up behind her, but then suddenly the blanket falls flat on the floor. Upon seeing this, she goes upstairs to the girls and sees something in the corner and gets a wind blown in her face. So now the ghost has resorted to breathing on people to scare them. When Dennis and Julie come back, she quickly leaves. When it's daytime, Dennis and Randy see all of these strange things that happened last night. Randy then asks if Julie knows about this, and Dennis says that she doesn't know and he won't show her as he wants to keep recording more great footage. At this point, Dennis is almost like Mika in the first movie. He knows that there's something supernatural and he has read that it's most likely not a good thing, yet he only cares about the videos. The fact that he won't share any of this with Julie to let her know that her own children are doing very strange things is extremely selfish and dangerous, and telling her could speed up the process of them finding out what's wrong with the kids. The next day, Christy is sick, so Dennis and Julie take her to the doctor while Randy takes care of Katie. So now Randy, the guy who's always late for work and steals books from the public library which you can get for free, he is tasked to look over a child. While they're alone, Katie asks him to play Bloody Mary with her, and he says yes. They then play around with the lights off, and after saying Bloody Mary for the third time, Randy gets scratched by a claw. When they try leaving the bathroom, he sees all of the furniture being thrown around outside. The two then continue hiding in the bathroom until all of it stops. It's kind of a strange idea to play a game to summon an evil spirit when Randy already knows that there is a demon in the house. As we know from the first movie, playing these kinds of games with the entity will only invite it in, so it's best to avoid these things. When Dennis and Julie eventually come back, Randy makes one of the smartest moves that we'll see in the entire series. He leaves. He tells Dennis that this ghost is evil, just like the books say.
This isn't Casper, the fucking friendly ghost you're chasing, man.
Then he walks out the door and we never see him again. Dennis quickly reviews the footage that he recorded in the bathroom and he sees what happened. Finally, he decides to tell Julie. They always realize these things when it's way too late. He tries explaining to her what he found out during his research, that there is this coven and that her family is a part of it. He warns her about how these witches will try to take the first son born into the family, but Julie doesn't believe him and tells him to stop. What's surprising here is that Dennis tells her all of these weird things about the coven which he doesn't have any proof for. He should just show her the footage that he recorded. That will serve as evidence for anything he's saying. He literally only shows her the worst information which builds up a lot of distrust in Julie. As they're having a discussion about the demonic things happening in the house, Katie gets attacked by Toby in her room. She then runs to her mother and interrupts the meeting she's having with Dennis. Katie then tells her how Toby was lifting her up by the hair, after which the mother says to Dennis,
This is your fault.
"What? How does that even make any sense? How is it Dennis's fault? He was with you the entire time." Now, even though what Dennis is saying sounds untrustworthy, everyone in the family is telling Julie that Toby is real and is actually attacking them, but she writes all of them off as lunatics. On the 14th night, Toby begins attacking Katie in the girl's bedroom. She continues to get terrorized until Christy agrees to convince her mother to bring her to their grandmother's place. When it's daytime, Christy asks if they can go, but the mother says no. However, she agrees after seeing her furniture being thrown around the kitchen. They then get out of the house and drive towards Grandma Lois. In the evening, as they're relaxing in the grandmother's bedroom, the daughters bring up Toby once again and say that he's with them now. Upon hearing this, the mother sends them to bed and tells them that there is no Toby. Now at this point, Julie knows that Toby is real. She's seen it herself, so did Dennis. So when the girls say that Toby is with them now, they should worry about getting rid of him, not just ignoring it. Just saying that he doesn't exist doesn't make it so. Dennis and Julie then also go to sleep. Late at night, they wake up after hearing some noises outside the house. It sounds like cars coming by and parking. Julie goes to check on the girls, but after a few minutes, she doesn't seem to return. Dennis then also walks around the house trying to find where everyone is, but he can't seem to find Julie nor the girls. Once he's downstairs, he sees someone through a window standing in the dining room, but when he walks inside there, he's all alone. Then he sees the coven symbol on the wall, which he saw earlier during his research, and he continues going around the house. Now, as soon as I would have seen the person disappearing, I would already be out of the house running away. And after seeing that symbol, I would think that I'm being tricked by both Julie and the kids. Dennis should just get out of here. The sign is basically proof that the grandma is in on it and she's aware of Toby. And considering that the girls have said that he's among them right now, I wouldn't try to challenge the demon. After hearing some noises near the door, Dennis walks outside and into another doorway. It's completely dark, so he turns on the light and is surprised to see a bunch of old people who begin to walk after him. To my surprise, Dennis goes back into the house. Since these are just a bunch of old farts, I would rather try running away, as the sequels show not all members of the Coven have supernatural powers, meaning that running away could potentially work. And even if it's not a guaranteed escape, it's definitely better than locking yourself in the house while being surrounded by all of the members of the Coven as well as Toby. Shortly after locking himself inside, Dennis finds Julie dead on the staircase. Afterwards, he finds Christy and eventually also Katie. But when he approaches Katie, she reveals to have some demonic-looking eyes and throws Dennis on the floor. Unable to stand up, Dennis tries crawling away. Then Grandma Lois appears and uses her powers to kill Dennis. Finally, she takes the two girls by their hands and walks upstairs. Now, even though the reveal that Grandma Lois is in on it comes as a big surprise, there were hints that could have revealed her role much earlier. For example, Dennis reads about the Coven and how it stretches for generations, meaning that someone in Julie's family, if not Julie herself, has to be a member of the Coven. And since Grandma Lois is the only person we see, it would have to be her. The grandmother also constantly pushes Julie to having more kids, preferably until she has a son.
You always said you wanted a big family.
I changed my mind, okay? I have two beautiful girls.
You always wanted a son.
Of course, this isn't entirely conclusive, but all of these small clues could have warned Dennis that Lois isn't as trustworthy as she seems. Overall, I'd say the worst choice goes to Dennis. He could have gotten the proper help involved early on. Or he could have warned Julie by showing her all of the footage, which would serve as undeniable proof of a ghost or demon being in their house. Anyway, those were some ways to beat Paranormal Activity 3, as well as the different choices. As always, I hope you liked it, and that I get to see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.
This is the last video.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. As you know, in this series, we look at how to survive horror movies, but we do it on our own way. In the video, we'll cover the bad choices, the good choices, and the big mistakes you need to avoid to survive until the end. Today we're looking at the first Paranormal Activity, one of the movies that really popularized the found footage style. In the movie, Micah, one of our protagonists, gets a new camera. When his girlfriend Katie arrives, we find out that it's his goal to capture some of the weird things that have been happening around the house, as Katie believes that she's haunted by a ghost. And getting the camera is actually a pretty good choice. It allows them to get proof and make sure that there really is something wrong. But as we'll see, this is probably the only good decision. During the second day, they invite the psychic Dr. Friedrichs to their home to get some advice. He talks to them about what might be after them. It seems like it's connected to Katie and not the house. He tells them not to anger it and not to talk to it, or else they're inviting it in, and this could kill Katie. And thank you Micah for focusing the camera on the microwave in the background. Anyway, the psychic lets them know that it's a demon. This is not what he specializes in, so he gives them the number of his colleague, Dr. Johann Avery's, a demonologist. After he's gone, Katie says she'll call that guy tomorrow, but Micah convinces her not to. They decide to make a deal. If it gets worse and they see more weird things happening, then she can call him. During the third night at 2 a.m., we see a door moving along with some growling noises. The next day they review the footage and Micah says that he checked the windows and doors and they were all closed, so it couldn't have been the wind or anything like that. And surprisingly, they choose to ignore it. This is a pretty terrible decision. Only a few minutes earlier, they said that if it gets worse, they'll call Dr. Avery's, and it did get worse, so Katie could call him right now. Micah himself thinks that this wasn't anything normal. They both believe that there is something supernatural, so getting some help from their point of view makes a lot of sense. Unfortunately, they just forget about the demonologist for a while. Soon after, Micah is alone in their bedroom, calling out to the demon, telling it to communicate while taunting it.
Part of your master plan just to move the door, or are you just doing random shit?
This is exactly what the psychic told him not to do. Micah is literally asking for something to happen, and according to Dr. Friedrichs, this will only make it worse. Micah goes out of his way to break the rules, and the fact that he does it purposefully makes it a pretty bad choice. It would make maybe a bit more sense if he doesn't believe in demons or they wouldn't have proof of anything yet. But they both already believe that there's something wrong here, and Katie is genuinely scared, so why would you ask for more? Anyway, during that night, as they're both sleeping, Katie suddenly wakes up from a nightmare and then loud bangs are heard downstairs. They also ignore this event. Over the next few days, the activity surprisingly calms down a bit. They don't talk about it anymore unless things happen. However, a few nights later, Mika shouts out loud and says that with nothing happening, it's getting kind of boring.
You scared? Hey, we haven't had anything interesting happen in a while.
What? Nothing interesting? As in you didn't feel like something was going to murder you in your sleep? He knows that there is something after Katie, and he's once again going against the advice of Dr. Friedrichs. What's important to notice here is that this happens during the 13th night, meaning that there was a whole lot of days that the movie skips over. This shows that if Mika isn't being an idiot and calling it out, the demon calms down for a bit, which might buy them more time. So if he does nothing, they can already increase their chances of surviving longer. That night at 3 a.m., the demon screams really loud and an aggressive bang is heard. Mika is very surprised, like, can you believe that this is happening? Yes, I can believe it, because you were literally begging the demon to do something. Then it attacks and he's like, where did that come from? Yeah, I wonder what caused this. Maybe you shouting at the demon to do it? I mean, we begin to see a correlation here. If they don't agitate it, it's not quite as bad. So from this point they should stop with the cameras, no more talking to it, none of that crap. The next morning, Mika mentions how cool last night was. He then tries talking to the demon with an audio recorder. Has last night not been scary enough? What is he doing? He clearly heard and saw that something was stalking them, and since I assume he doesn't want to die, he shouldn't do this. He knows that calling it out will make it worse. This highlights just how much of a douchebag Mika is. He tries his hardest to make it worse because he thinks that it's only Katie that will suffer the consequences, since the demon is coming after her. So he's messing with it, thinking that he's gonna be fine, so he can do whatever he wants. This is another absolutely terrible choice. He then reviews the audio recording, and when he asks if it would rather talk with a Ouija board, it growls.
Be happier to talk with the Ouija board?
Whoa.
So of course, Mika gets a Ouija board. I can barely put into words how stupid this choice really is. He read that demons only cause pain.
Demons suck. Basically, they're these malevolent, evil spirits that only exist to cause pain.
That's their sole intention. So if it wants to talk with a Ouija board, it's probably saying that because it will help the demon reach its goal, meaning that you should do everything not to talk to it with a Ouija board. Mika gets everything set up and calls Katie into the living room to show her his plan, but Katie only gets a little bit upset. And you know what? I'll just say it. Leave this guy. Katie should dump Mika. He's a total jerk and he's putting her life at risk. Katie says, I want to call for help. He says, no help. She says, no cameras, please. Mika says, cameras on. She says, no Ouija board. Mika gets a Ouija board. What makes it such a bad move is that he knows that there's a demon. He believes in it just as much as Katie. I guarantee you, if it were his life that would be in danger, he wouldn't do any of this nonsense. And this specifically was something that everyone told him not to do.
So, figure I'm gonna go out and get a Ouija board?
No. And if you do pick up a board and try to play games with it, the entity will sense that you're trying to communicate with it.
As they're arguing outside, the board starts moving by itself and catches on fire. A short while later, we see that Katie has given Mika another chance. Why? And by the way, they still haven't called the doctor that the psychic recommended. When will she call him? What is she waiting for? A bedsheet with 2 eyes cut out flying around the room? This one's on Katie though. It's her responsibility to call for help since Mika clearly won't do it. And even if Mika convinces her not to, she could still do it behind his back. She can meet Dr. Avery's at his house and leave Mika in the dark about it. They made a deal about calling him, and it's only been getting worse since their discussion. Once they're back inside, they see what happened, and Mika asks Katie to interpret the markings the demon left on the board. But Katie isn't so nice anymore.
This is not the time for this.
Get out! Get out!
Sounds like someone's already possessed. Why are you overreacting? There's just a demon that wants to kill you. Relax. When nighttime comes around, we see that Katie still allows Mika to record, but only under her vague conditions. No, Katie needs a break from all of Mika's nonsense. She needs to stop just doing what he says. How in the hell does this relationship come to the point where the guy makes all the calls? That's not how it works. I'm kind of jealous of Mika, so he swears not to offend the demon anymore, and that promise lasts about 7 minutes before he continues his shenanigans.
Okay, do you wanna know what happened to the Ouija board?
This guy deserves a kick in the nuts. He has some balls to talk about the Ouija board again after she yelled at him for it. The next morning, he's again messing around with the board, and you know what? I'm not even surprised. The day after, Katie wants to call the demonologist, but Mika says he has one more thing he wants to try. He wants to put white powder on the floor to see if he can maybe track his footsteps. And this is another terrible idea. Both of them know that there is something going on here. So what does he hope to find with the ghost footsteps? What will that prove that your other footage doesn't already? I mean, if you find footsteps on your floor, she'll call Dr. Avery's. If you don't find them, she'll also call him. What difference does it make? Just call him right now. So before they sleep, he sets up the powder and says that no ghost will come into his house and mess with his girlfriend.
I'm taking care of this. Nobody comes to my house, fucks with my girlfriend. It's away with it.
Okay, calm down, MacGyver. What are you gonna do when it arrives? Throw some flour in its face? Hit it with a camera? What's your plan? By the way, the only one messing with your girlfriend is you. Mika is the one making everything 10 times worse. Then he turns around and says, "Don't worry, babe, I'll protect you." I mean, the call is coming from inside the house. Whatever, at around 3 in the morning, they wake up and find footsteps on the floor. They lead all the way back into the attic where Mika finds the picture that they burned in the second movie. When it's daytime, Katie finally wants to call Dr. Johan Avery's, but he's out of the country. So they call the psychic back, who says he'll come tomorrow. That night, after they go back to sleep, the demon slams the door shut and loudly bangs on it. So Mika yells at the demon, saying it should show itself, and he'll beat him up if it doesn't stop. I love Mika, man. He yells at the ghost to attack.
Hey, we haven't had anything interesting happen in a while.
Then when it does, he goes, "Oh my god, what was that?" It's exactly what you asked for. And once again, he's challenging it, talking to it, continuously making it worse. It was made very clear that he needs to interact with it as little as possible. This continues the next day when a bang is heard, and of course Mika's first instinct is to grab the camera. If I were Katie, I would have had enough of this nonsense. He clearly doesn't care at all about how threatened she feels. I mean, earlier he was in the pool giving her the finger. What the hell kind of crap is that? They then see that a picture of them is cracked with scratch marks on Mika's face. This should show him that the demon might come after him too, because it's scratched very deliberately over his face, indicating that he's also a target. Knowing that it's not only Katie who might get attacked, this should be the last thing he records before never communicating with the demon again. But of course he doesn't do that, and he ignores the demon's warning. Later, when the psychic comes back, he can sense that it's gotten much worse. He tells him that Dr. Avery's will be back in a few days, but he has to go now as he's making the demon more angry. Both ask if they should leave, but Dr. Friedrichs informs them that it won't help at all. He then exits and they don't know what to do. What they can do here is ask Dr. Friedrichs if he knows someone else that can help. They ask specifically for Johan Avery's, but he's not there. So it's at least worth a try to ask if he can give them the contact information for anyone else that might be able to help. And since the psychic instantly leaves, what Katie can do is call her sister Christy, and she might be able to get in contact with him to get further information. Now, of course, as we saw from the second movie, Christy's family knows what's going on, so they might not want to help. But just getting anyone else to talk to him on her behalf would be better than ignoring it. During another day, Katie and Mika get into an argument. She wants him to stop recording, but he keeps shoving the camera in her face. This results in Katie getting more and more angry until they're both shouting at each other. Like everything else, it's obviously Mika's fault, but it's a little bit worse here. Earlier, they were told that the demon feeds off of negative emotions.
These hauntings, they feed off of negative energy. So if there is something negative going on here, it will help spur on the haunting.
So the more they fight about recording or not recording, that ironically might increase the amount of activity in the house since there is more bad energy. So even if Mika wants to record, he could at least try hiding it so they don't get into a bunch of arguments. Instead, he goes directly in her face with it. Katie then cries upstairs. Mika quickly tells her that it will be okay and it's not her fault. And he's right, it's not Katie's fault. It's his fault. I mean, he heard her crying and got the camera to record her. Think about how messed up that is. As it gets dark again and they're both sleeping, Katie gets pulled out of the room at 4:30 a.m. Mika quickly runs after her and drags her back into the bedroom. This might have been the perfect moment for Mika to escape. I would just say, okay, she's his now, I'm out of here. Mika can still save himself and the footage. I think that would be hilarious. He deliberately ruins her life, then when she's gone, he can walk out with some killer footage and make millions off her corpse. Anyway, finally we get to the last night, October 8th. Katie goes out of bed and stares at Mika. Then she walks downstairs and lets out a demonic scream. Mika quickly runs towards her and gets killed. Afterwards, we hear footsteps coming up the stairs and Mika is thrown into the bedroom. I think Mika gets killed because even the demon felt bad for Katie. After that, a possessed Katie jumps towards the camera. So the worst choice, which we decided to call the golden turd, who will that go to? Will it be Mika for provoking the demon? Or Mika for not allowing Dr. Avery's to come over? Or is it Mika for getting a Ouija board? Let's just say it'll go to everything Mika does. His biggest mistake was being born. No, just kidding. I love this movie, but Mika, goddamn. Anyway, those were some ways to beat Paranormal Activity, as well as the different choices. As always, I hope you liked it, and that I get to see you guys in the next video. Bye, guys. Hey, what's up guys? So recently I saw a movie that was really interesting and apparently it's pretty new. It's called Fall. I hadn't seen any marketing material for this movie at all. No trailer or anything. I only found out about it because another YouTuber covered it and I thought, why haven't I heard of this thing? This contained thriller has a fairly simple premise. Two girls climb a giant-ass tower in the middle of the desert with no one else around. And of course, they get stuck on it. Throughout the story, we watch their numerous attempts as they try to come back down. I have to admit, I had a lot more fun than I thought with this one. It's really intense. We get a lot of dangerous climbing segments, even a number of scenes where the characters aren't secured at all. They're basically free climbing, and let me tell you, this movie will definitely make your palms sweat. I'm guessing it's inspired by all those free climbers that got millions of views on YouTube. You know, guys like Mustang Wanted, this crazy Ukrainian guy who uploaded videos of himself doing like pull-ups on a crane. By the way, I'm only saying this once because I'm not going to be responsible for any of your actions. Don't try anything you see in this video at home. Many of these guys die, and not like of natural causes or anything. They fall off a building like in the beginning of Kick-Ass. Now just for context as to why these two girls in the movie are doing this stunt, Becky and Hunter are thrill seekers who are always looking for an adrenaline rush. In the prologue, we see both of them mountain climbing along with Becky's boyfriend, Dan. Hunter is climbing without being secured? No. While they're climbing here, Dan gets attacked by a few birds, which leads him to fall off the mountain and dying when his rope slips out of the rock. Almost a year later, Becky is still mourning his death, and Hunter thinks it's a good idea to invite her on her trip to the desert to climb the 2,000-foot-tall B67 TV tower. Should have called it the B69 tower, hey-oh. You'd think that Becky perhaps learned her lesson from Dan's death, but no. Hunter says that climbing this tower will make her move on in life.
I haven't climbed since... Becky, if you don't confront your fears, you are always going to be afraid.
Not a great idea, but they're adrenaline junkies, so they do it anyway. When they arrive at the tower, it's already all rusty, screws are loose, it's shaky, no thank you, and they begin their climb up. They basically loose, it's shaky, no thank you, and they begin their climb up. They basically climb a 2,000-foot tall ladder, and when Becky looks down, it gets quite creepy and uncomfortable. Now, watching the movie, you'd think that just climbing the tower would be enough, but it's actually what they're doing up here that's truly insane. Hunter is an influencer, and of course, she needs to get a few good pics for the gram. At first, they fly a drone, which would already freak me out. Imagine you're standing up there and then this thing comes flying at you. I would out of instinct just walk backwards and go flying. Anyways, that's not enough for Hunter. She needs to get more likes, man. So she hangs herself from the platform, holding on only with one arm. My palms are wet looking at this. Hey, are you crazy? And then Hunter is like, oh my god, this was so much fun. Your turn, Becky. Now, if I were up there and she tries to get me to do this, I'm like, no, man. And then she's like, oh, come on, it's so much fun. I'm like, no. And she's like, it will make you forget about your dead boyfriend. I just push her off the thing. I said no. But Becky does something, I don't even know if it's more dangerous or less. I'm not even sure I want to know. Becky is holding on only to Hunter's wrist and dangling off the platform. Hunter is like crouched over with one hand on Becky and the other holding onto her phone. I mean, if one gust of wind hits her in the ass, they're both dead. They just fall down. But you know what? This moment is not nearly as bad as the event that pushes the story into the second act. So the only way up or down this tower is the ladder. That is especially true for this top part. If you're on the main thing, you can sort of cheat it because you're on a more complex metal structure, so you can gradually climb down. But on the top, no. So they need the ladder. Unfortunately, the screws holding the top ladder in place eventually come completely loose and fall out. So after Becky and Hunter are done taking their suicidal selfies on top of this insanely small platform 2,000 feet up in the air, they want to make their way back down. And this movie would be very short if it would be that easy. Becky slowly makes her way down the ladder when suddenly all of the ladders from the upper part of the tower fall down. This leads to an extremely exciting moment where Becky is holding onto the thing as it's falling off. This part made me physically react. It's one of those moments that almost acts like a jump scare despite nothing disturbing happening. Now, luckily, Becky doesn't die here, but it's really insane when she's dangling off the rope upside down. The closest experience that I've had to this is changing a light bulb while standing on a ladder, and that was intense enough for me. By the way, they do have some rope up here, but not nearly enough to get them back to the first platform. Also, the backpack full of supplies that Becky had fell down and landed on one of the satellite dishes a little lower. Now, their first instinct upon being stuck up here is to call for help with their phones. Hunter sees that an Instagram photo she posted from the bottom of the tower went online, meaning they should have a signal up here, right? Unfortunately, the antenna from the TV tower is intercepting the signal she should be getting with her phone. But they come up with another possible solution. They might just need to get the phone lower. After all, it's unclear where exactly they lost the signal. It must be between the bottom of the tower and the top. So their idea is to lower the phone a little with the rope they have, and maybe they can get some sort of reception. They basically want to post the message online from the top, lower the phone, and once it gets a signal, it will upload automatically. They let it down as far as the rope allows them to, but they don't hear any notification sound from it uploading, so it must go even lower. Luckily, Hunter has an idea for how to get the phone just a little further down. She wants to hold the rope in one hand and then hang herself from the platform only holding on with the other hand. Personally, I don't think this is a great idea. Of course, it's like a desperate attempt, but you're only getting like 4 extra feet distance, and I'm not risking my life over that, man. By the way, do you guys remember when I said the backpack fell down? Well, that leads to another insane moment, and after this part happened, I had to pause the movie and just pace around my apartment a little bit. Let me know if you guys also do that sometimes. It was just too much, so I had to take a break. So after a full day up here, these two are obviously starting to get thirsty for water, not for, anyways. And they need to drink water before they, die. The water is in the backpack, which is on the satellite dish below. Hunter decides that she will climb down. So they secure the rope they have, and she slowly makes her way lower. Of course, it's not long enough and doesn't quite reach the backpack. Because this woman is insane, she's like, oh no, it's fine, I'll just jump to the satellite dish. And because they let the rope down in a terrible way, she's not right above it, so she has to swing herself back and forth and then jump like 15 feet through the air, 2,000 feet up high onto the poorly secured satellite dish, which is all shaky. She gets the water and drinks a little bit, but what about Becky? She also needs the water and she's still up top. Hunter needs to come back up, so she jumps on the rope. If I see one person writing in the comments that this is super easy because it's not that long of a jump, I will fight you in the street. I don't know which one of these is worse. Whether jumping on the thing or off of it is more dangerous. I mean, I'm guessing jumping off the satellite dish might be a little bit harder because she needs to catch the rope. If there's a short burst of wind whipping the rope around, there's no way to catch it and she just fall, like the title of the movie. So those were, in my opinion, the most intense moments in Fall. I do highly recommend that you watch this movie yourself. I will say that me summarizing it does not do the movie justice at all. It really is quite an experience watching it yourself. Anyways, let me know what you thought of the movie. As always, I hope you liked it and that I get to see you guys in the next video. I'm going to go watch Smile now. I'm really excited for it. Bye, guys.
Damn. What a cool
Hey.
videos there. I'm sorry I would need to end this live right now because this is almost an hour of the live and I am just watching videos. This is boring family. So yeah, I am just going to end it. I hope I'll see you next time.